Yo, what's going on, YouTube? And welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy, Kevin Forte, and we are taking a look today, continuing our brief series today as we look at the division standings at the end of the 2022-23 NHL season. What are the standings going to look like? And today we are heading back in the Eastern Conference, looking at the Metropolitan division. This is a pretty wide open division. I think there's a lot of question about what we could see happening here. But I think between 1 and 6, it's pretty wide open. But my two bottom teams, I'm pretty confident those two teams will be at the bottom. We're going to go over that. Number 8 is the Philadelphia Flyers. I think there's too many questions around the Flyers here. I'm not sold on what they did this year. Johnny Gaudreau coming in would have really helped them out. It would have gave them some confidence. It would have gave them that scoring edge that they desperately need. They just don't have enough of a scoring threat. And now that you're looking at a situation where where Giroux is no longer there, I think it really hurts them. Now, they did have a lot of injuries last year. Ryan Ellis was injured most of the season. Joel Farabee was out for a large portion of the season. Coots was out for a large portion of the season. I get that. They've had some injuries, no doubt about it. And same thing for Kevin Hayes. I mean, you could go up and down the roster. So that was a factor, but I just do not like what they've got here. I'm just not sold. I like John Tortorella coming in. I think he's the guy there, but I'm not liking it. I'm not liking what I've seen here, and I think that they're just a team that's going to struggle. And I hate to say it, the goaltending situation definitely concerns me. Carter Hart and Ivan Fedotov. We don't even know if Fedotov's going to be in North America in September for training camp. He's currently in Russia fighting in the military. I don't know what's going to happen there. So until that's figured out, I'm not liking that. Their blue line still has holes. Yes, they brought in Tony DeAngelo, but Ellis is still not going to start this season. It's going to be another situation where Provorov is probably playing way too many minutes and gets exposed because he's overplayed. And I really hope that's not what happens. Do they force Cam York into the top 4? These are all things that I'm just thinking in the back of my head. The nightmare scenario that happens in Philadelphia. Do they have enough scoring from guys like Owen Tippett? Are we going to see guys continue to develop like that up front? What's Tyson Forster's stealing? Like, these are the kind of questions that the Flyers probably want more answers to. Isaac Ratcliffe had a good end to the season, so that's where the Flyers are at. I'm not sold on them. It's going to be another tough season. Number 7 is the New Jersey Devils. So the Devils are weird because I think that they've got some good pieces there, right? They added Andre Palat this summer. They've added some players through the draft, Simon Nemec, Luke Hughes, that could maybe jump into the lineup, but I'm just not sold on the goaltending. I think there is definitely a distrust for Mackenzie Blackwood. Jonathan Bernier has consistently been injured. Vitek Vanacek comes in. I think he's a good goalie. He's played well in Hershey. Maybe that's some bias. But playing at the NHL as probably a starting goalie, I don't know about that. I just think in this division, that is not going to be good enough. And I think they're investing a lot into Vanacek. We're going to find out pretty quickly if this works or not. But just throwing money at the issue, it doesn't seem like it works. And I do worry that the Devils are going to struggle with that goalie tandem. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully Blackwood comes back healthy and has a great bounce back season. I'm just not sold on that. It's been 2 or 3 years now since he's been good, but he does have that in him. He has been a good goalie in the past. So maybe without COVID situation and different circumstances and injuries, maybe if he had the long summer off, that allowed him to heal and he'll be ready to go. I don't know. We'll see, but I'm not sold on the Devils. Number 6 is the Washington Capitals. So we're definitely seeing a little bit of a changing of the script here. So Washington is the team that falls out here. And the reason for that is I'm not sold on the goalie tandem. I like Lindgren at his number, but I'm not a fan of Darcy Kemper as the starting goalie. That is the role he's going to be given. And he was good in Colorado. No discredit to what Kemper did. He deserved the Stanley Cup in Colorado, but that defense was a absolute wrecking ball. That isn't the case in Washington. This is a little bit more of a fragile blue line. And I got to be honest, I don't know how good Peter Laviolette's going to do with this team. There were some questions last year about what was going on there. And I hate to say it, but the R word is probably being whispered about a little bit in Washington. Is this the beginning of the end of the Washington Capitals era? Nick Backstrom might not play next season. Carl Hagelin dealing with some injuries with his eye. He may never play again. Let me go through the list. Who are some of the other guys that aren't going to start next season that are on LTIR? Tom Wilson also injured. He's on the LTIR right now. So Washington has some questions. There are some questions about this team. They did add some guys in free agency, maybe nobody's really talking about, but they did make some additions here and there. They did add Connor Brown from Ottawa. Again, kind of taking on Tom Wilson's spot for a little bit. Dylan Strome comes in. I like that. You're hoping to see some of the younger guys from Hershey, like Connor McMichael and Axel Janssen-Fialbi, add some scoring depth. That's going to be critical for them. And they have a little bit of, there's going to be a lot of guys playing for their NHL careers in Washington on the blue line. Everybody except John Carlson is due a new contract next summer. So Martin Fehervary, Nick Jensen, Dmitry Orlov, Trevor Van Riemsdyk, Eric Gustafson, and Matt Irwin. All those guys are due new contracts. So the Capitals definitely going to see a regression this season. I think this is the year for the Caps. Again, the goaltending isn't necessarily a selling point for me. Their defense is getting older. And their forward depth is good, but is it good enough? And I guess those are all the questions I have. And again, is Ovi still what he's at? And I think the question is yes, but is there enough depth behind him? It's not enough for me to say they are a playoff team. Number 5, this is going to piss off the Capitals fans, but I have CBJ ahead of them here. Listen, Jarmo Kekalainen and the Blue Jackets, they could be putting together a pretty good season this year. They've got some great players there. Patrick Laine returns. He's going to probably see a boost in his production now that Johnny Hockey's there. You look at that center core. Don't look now, but the Blue Jackets have some really good centers in Columbus right now. Just to name off a couple of these guys: Jack Roslovic, Sean Corrali, Justin Danforth, Kent Johnson, Cole Sillinger, are just a couple of those guys. I think this is going to be a really great season for them. There's a lot of potential on this hockey team, and I think that the Blue Jackets are destined to take that next step. And I think that it won't lead to playoffs, but I do think that they move up in the standings. The biggest question here is that goaltending. How is the goaltending going to do? Merzlikins and Korpisalo did have their moments last year, but they also had their moments where they kind of weren't great, and some of that could be on the back of just the defense not being that great. They did add Goodbranson this summer. Not a great contract, but he's a good defenseman, so we'll see what happens there. So now we get to my teams that make the playoffs, the top 4. And the first team is the New York Islanders. So I do think the Islanders get back to the playoffs. Call me a homer, whatever you want. But out of the last 2 teams I mentioned, the biggest difference between them, Washington, and Columbus is the Islanders' goaltending is still very good. Now, as long as the Islanders keep Sorokin and Varlamov and they're healthy next season, I like the Islanders' goaltending tandem. That's really big. They added to the blue line. As much as I like Chara and Green, adding a guy like Alexander Romanov is a huge addition, huge upgrade for the Islanders on the blue line. Up front, Nazem Kadri probably coming in. That's a huge addition for the Islanders. But again, what is his scoring ceiling next season with the Islanders system and not playing the minutes that he did in Colorado? He was kind of sheltered behind Nathan McKinnon. That's not going to be the case in New York. So I think there's going to be some questions there. I do like the idea of Lane Lambert being the head coach. He's going to allow some of the younger guys to kind of freewheel it, which may mean Nazem Kadri, Matt Barzal. Hopefully they re-sign guys like Oliver Wahlstrom, Noah Dobson. So that is kind of the resurgence of the Islanders in that regard. I do think they make the playoffs. They did have a lot of things go against them. The late opening of UBS, the COVID stuff that happened, just things did not go well for the Islanders. And I think that you could chalk it up to a bad season. Listen, you look at 2 of the last 3 seasons, the Islanders have been good. They've been a very, very good hockey team. Can they get back to that this season? This is going to be the real test for the Islanders. Are they the version of the team we saw last year, or the and 3 seasons prior to that. So we'll see. Number 3 is the Pittsburgh Penguins. I like Pittsburgh still, and as much as I hate to say that, I thought Pittsburgh would miss the playoffs last year. I'm not betting against Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin. That is just stupid. Until they prove otherwise, I'm keeping them in the playoffs. The goaltending is pretty good. I think there's some questions still in between the pipes. But for the most part, Jari and DeSmith have done good enough to get the Penguins to the playoffs. And I think that they've done some little things here and there that can let them get back to the playoffs, and I think fairly easily. So we'll see what happens. Again, it's Malkin and Crosby, and they were able to keep some of those guys like Rickard Rakell. I think those were huge for them. I think those are things that allow them to kind of stay status quo. And do they go on a deep playoff run next year? I'm not sold on that necessarily, but I do think they can get into the postseason. And that means our top 2 is the exact same as it was last season. And at number 2 is the Rangers, and number 1 is Carolina. So to go over the Rangers first, I like what the Rangers did in free agency. Yes, they did let go of Kopp. That one hurts in my opinion, but I like Vincent Trocheck coming in. You've got some of the younger guys continuing to develop, guys like Hedel, who I think are really good players for the Rangers moving forward. Kakko needs to develop. He's on a bridge deal. He's on a prove-it deal. Let's see what he's got in the tank. As well as the continued development of guys like Alexei Lafreniere on the blue line. You've got another year of Adam Fox, one of the best defensemen in the league. Zach Jones, Keandre Miller, Braden Schneider, Libor Hayek. Getting to see some of the guys from Hartford coming up this year. Nils Lundqvist probably going to get an opportunity next season. Up front, you still have guys like Vitaly Kravtsov, Brennan Ottman, Lauri Pajuniemi, Matthew, what is his name? No, not Johnny Brodzinski. He's actually a pretty good player still. Trying to remember, where is he? Robertson. Don't they have Robertson? Is that the blue liner? Matthew Robertson. So they've got guys all over the place that are still pretty good. And I think that the Rangers have to be pretty sold on what they've got. I got to be honest, I like what they've done here. I think the Rangers are pretty good. Their goaltending is a little sus. Not Shesterkin. It's Halak, Louis Domingue, who played them in the first round last year, and Dylan Garand, who is a very highly regarded goalie prospect. So as if Shesterkin isn't enough, Dylan Garand at 20 years old could be coming up in the pipeline over the next couple of years. But I really like what the Rangers have. I think they've got a solid team. Most of the band's coming back together, but the question is, can the big boys produce in the playoffs? And that ended up being a problem for them last year. A lot of it was on the kid line. The kid line got them going last year, and the Frank Vetrano line scored a lot of goals for them in the playoffs. It wasn't so much the Panarins and the Kreiders and the Zibanejads. They were fairly quiet in the playoffs last year. So that is something to look at, you know? So we'll see. Carolina is still at the top. I like their goaltending. I think a healthy Ranta and Anderson is going to be pretty tough to beat in the playoffs and during the regular season once again. Carolina is a very good team. They added some really underrated guys. They utilized their cap space. They brought in guys like Max Pacioretty, who led the Golden Knights in goals last season, as well as Brent Burns on the blue line to replace D'Angelo. I think that was another great addition for them. So I think Carolina is still at the top of the heap in the Metro, but there's some really stiff competition there with Carolina, Pittsburgh, and the Islanders. I think all 4 of those teams are pretty interchangeable at the top. I think Columbus, Washington, and New Jersey are in a tier of their own, and I'm just not sold on Philadelphia. But let me know what you guys think down below. What do you guys think of my Metropolitan Division rankings? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.